Welcome, everybody. Thanks for downloading another episode of Wigs for Wigs. I'm Joe Cook, joined once again by Bill Venezia, and it's been a little while here. So thank you for sticking with us out there, all of our listeners. Things have come up. We haven't been able to record episodes, and we're really happy that you're sticking with us and tuning in to hear what we have to say. So, Bill, how you doing today?
Good, Joe. Good, Joe. It's been a long time, and sometimes life intervenes, and I know that you're in the midst of the meat grinder of the end of the school year, so it's been tough to get together. Hopefully, as as the summer progresses, we may be able to do a little bit more with
Yeah, a
things.
lot of shows go on hiatus over the summer. We might be picking up steam during the summer.
Definitely, definitely.
So we'll provide you all out there with some entertainment over your summertime uh, to listen to on your long car rides down the shore or wherever you're going. Um, so, Bill, what do you want to talk about today? There's no shortage of stuff that's been happening out there.
Well, I guess we can talk about where we are politically, where we are for election 2024. What are the trends and what's going on in terms of where Trump and Biden are, and where Joe Kennedy is, and if in fact that's going to, not Joe Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr.
Did
Sorry.
a worm eat part of your brain too?
I think it did. I think it did. I think it's not. I'm not all there, but I think I've exercised that worm. I'm not so sure that Robert Kennedy Jr. has exercised him, but I think I don't know how valid the polls are. One of the questions I had for you, you'd know this a little bit more than me. Has Nikki Haley capitulated to Donald Trump and supported is going to?
This
Give
was
her
this was
fealty to him.
literally just the news yesterday that Nikki Haley stated that she's going to be voting for Donald Trump. She didn't explicitly endorse Donald Trump, but she did say that she's going to personally be voting for him, which is essentially the same, I guess, but it's a distinction without a difference. But
I think the question there is, will she bring that portion of the Republican Party that she garnered, which estimates anywhere from 20
consistently
to
been around 20%, even in the primaries that have happened since she dropped out.
Will she bring those votes with her? Remains to be seen. I think she made some impact in terms of those suburban women voters with regard to being never Trumpers. It remains to be seen where that support is, and I think it's a little too early to even gauge it. I think that her support will get of Donald Trump tacitly, if it is that, will basically get tested as the weeks go on when they start doing polling again. Maybe after the first debate, that should be interesting. What do you think about
the schedule now? That's another thing. You think
June
we'll
and September?
Get deep philosophical discussions about the proper role of government in our debates?
Well, you know what? The format is going to dictate that. The questions, the policy questions that both CNN and ABC, which are the same entity, really it's Disney, they formulate. They actually have pretty good people.
Dana Bash and Jake Tapper doing the first one. I know.
Yep.
They're both very good news people.
And who's doing it with David Muir?
Not sure.
Not sure. It was a woman. I can't think of her name. But I think the question is going to be: are they going to cut the candidates off when they go over? Shut the microphones off. That's what Biden wants.
I have trouble believing they're going to do that.
Really? All right. What about what about supporters in the audience?
I'm a cynic about that too. I don't see how they're going to say, no, we're not going to have anybody in there. I know that's what Biden asked for. I just I don't see how the networks are gonna go through with that.
Isn't it ironic that in 1960, when they did the Nixon Kennedy debates, there were no people in the audience. It was strictly, no sound in terms of other than the candidate speaking.
But I mean, that kind of is emblematic of television in the 1960s.
Yep.
Right. I mean, the news in general was much more subdued. Here's an anchor telling you kind of neutrally what's happening in the news. This is a pre 24-hour news cycle, pre cable news networks era that you're talking about with Kennedy Nixon, that the news was more straightforward and subdued and quiet. I mean, look at the famous broadcast of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, where there's just minutes of silence, really, of Walter Cronkite kind of digesting what's happening. And, people don't accept silence on television all that much anymore. And I don't think the networks are going to go through with that. I just don't.
Well, then that's a plus for Trump, but I don't think it matters much to his hardcore MAGA supporters. He can say whatever he wants to say, up there, and they'll still support him. I think that's baked in. But if it's policy driven, the questions, I think that those independents will base their decision on who they're going to vote for.
Just speaking of independence and the debates, here's a question that I've not really heard anybody even talk about, and I don't know why. Are they going to legitimize Robert Kennedy Jr. by allowing him to participate in any of the debates?
You know what? That's going to be up to the networks, because neither of the candidates want him there.
Yeah.
Neither Trump camp or Biden's camp want.
I'm thinking of in US history too. We're getting close to the end here of the school year, and we just covered the 1992 election, where Ross Perot was allowed to participate in the debates with George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and neither of them wanted him there. Certainly President Bush didn't want Ross Perot up there on the stage with them. And, it legitimized Ross Perot. I know his polling was even beyond what Robert Kennedy is right now. There was a point Perot was even leading in the polls in 1992. But Robert Kennedy does not have insignificant support, according to most polling that's including him. He's I've seen anywhere from 5 to 15% in national polls. That's not nothing. So are they going to allow him into the debates? And what wrench does that throw into all of it if they do? That's
you know what? I think it's definitely a mixed bag. Those people, I judge this with this small sample of the Republican town that I reside in. I passed a couple of overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump in 2020. And I've passed a number of houses, 2 or 3, that's a number. So that's infinitesimal, but when you talk about, it's a number. I've seen Robert F. Kennedy for president signs on their lawns.
I haven't seen any Kennedy signs up by me, but that's, again, we're in very different areas, but
yes.
I'm in a overwhelmingly Democrat town. Our whole city government is Democrat, but up in Bergen County, but I haven't seen any Kennedy stuff. I have seen a few scattered, MAGA things. My father-in-law has his Trump stuff all ready to go. I haven't seen any Kennedy stuff, but I've seen a few Biden things, although I've mostly seen bumper stickers, and you don't really know if bumper stickers are left over from last time or if they're new.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's relatively quiet. I mean, Trump has done very little campaigning other than a couple of rallies, and his campaign.
He did a rally in New Jersey not long ago. One of his days off.
That part of the state is definitely very red. But he did very well there.
I think their official logic was they thought they might draw a bit of the Philadelphia suburbs down to Wildwood, and if they're gonna win Pennsylvania, they need some support from the Philadelphia suburbs. So, because a lot of people were questioning, why would you do a rally on one of your rare free days in solid blue New Jersey? And the campaign, that was kind of their logic, their rationale, that, you know, we're going to draw crowds from the Philadelphia suburbs and we need them if we're going to win Pennsylvania. So, you know, I don't know. I think probably it was mostly people from South Jersey that are solidly Republican voters, but
You know, it's I think then he should have been out in Western Pennsylvania, you know, where you might have a chance. I mean, in Pittsburgh or I forgot the name of that other town that's out that way. I think is that Erie County?
yeah, Erie County, Erie, Pennsylvania is a city out there.
Erie is the one that's the city that's you know, potentially.
Not a giant city, but certainly a Republican leaning city.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think it's going to basically be relatively quiet. I guess, you know, when the verdict comes down, the impact of that may affect both sides.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's say, and I'm not saying this is my prediction of what's going to happen, but let's say he's found guilty in the New York hush money trial. What's that mean in your perspective to his election prospects? Do people care?
I think that there's some data in polling that suggests that independents and some never Trump Republicans would care and would not vote for a convicted felon. That remains to be seen. With regard to MAGA, he'll use his conviction to basically further bolster his standing with that portion of, the majority of the Republican Party, you know, because they'll say that it's New York, and the trial, everything was basically against him in that trial. I think if he wins, I think the reverse will happen. Except for MAGA. MAGA will, of course, herald his innocence and say it was a witch hunt, and this validates it. And I think it may turn some of those never Trumpers, some of those independents. And I think what you're talking about right now, the polling with women, he's way underwater. All right. He does lead male voters, but not by as wide a margin as you would think. And again, it's probably too early. I think the other impact other than that trial is, you know, the effect of the economy. You know, the economy seems to be getting better. I think that CHIPS Act is definitely helping him with regard to, now it is, because there was going to be a time lag between when that legislation was signed and the effect that it would have on the economy with regard to our ability to produce our own, you know, for electronics. And I think that coupled with, isn't it ironic that that Biden basically decided to, you know, impose, you know, keep those tariffs on, increase them with China, you know. What do you think? You tell me, what is the effect on that trial, on the campaign?
I honestly don't think it's going to matter. I don't. I think people, first of all, I just have to say, how do people not have their mind made up on how they're going to vote at this point? I mean, we know Donald Trump, we know Joe Biden. What you really need to see 6 more months of the two of them to decide who you're going to vote for? I mean, are people that I don't know what adjectives to even use, but what more do you need to see? Have we really forgotten what Donald Trump's presidency was? That people are like, oh, I wonder what he would be like if he was president again.
If you don't, you basically should take him at his word. What his next term would be like, unfettered by any more elections. Pretty scary, you know.
How about his ad the other day that included in the background text a unified Reich?
A unified Reich. You can't make it up. I don't know.
Oh, well, I didn't make that ad. I just retweeted it, or I just put it out there. That's always his defense for everything. Well, somebody made that ad for you. You
Who made it? Putin? You know, the Wehrmacht's not around, so it can't be them. But you know, it's amazing, those types of things. I mean, they're a window to what this man is like.
that is
You know?
reflective of the supporters of him who made that ad. So
Yeah.
whether it was, I don't know, Stephen Miller, whoever else made it, but they could have pulled any, you know, background newspaper like image to put in the background. This wasn't just, oh, they searched for newspaper background and the first thing that came up on Google Images featured the words Unified Reich. I mean, this was an intentional insertion of that into the ad. That's
Do you think the American public is drifting that far towards authoritarianism? Do you think that they want to see our government be less democratic?
it seems,
Or is this the work of people who are manipulating the public through media, you know, social media? You know?
well, I mean, I think that's part of shaping people drifting towards authoritarianism, but it certainly seems that people are more on board with a less democratic, lowercase d democratic form of government in our country and in the Western world in general, right? We've seen that in Europe also, countries
Well,
drifting more towards authoritarianism.
yeah, and you've seen some reaction to it in other countries where it's gone exactly the opposite direction. I know in Hungary, but Hungary's always leaned that way. If you
Yeah.
look
I
historically,
mean,
they were the first
Let's-
Eastern European country to embrace the Nazis.
yeah,
They had their own form of the Nazi party, you know?
let's be honest for a moment about American history. We've always had an undercurrent of that in America. Right? People that are not on board with expanded democracy. Let's put it that way. Illiberalism, as a recent book that came out by
Yep.
Stephen Hahn put it, a historian, the history of illiberalism in America, that there's always been that undercurrent at any point in American history. And you know, we've talked a little bit about 20th century history already in this election, in this podcast episode. If you look at back in the kind of the 1950s, kind of the John Birch Society type people, the America First people before that. I mean, that's always been there in America. But it does seem like it's growing in popularity, that point of view. And again, social media, whatever might be responsible for spreading it, it does seem to be catching on with an increasing percentage of the population.
I think that the increase in that is also due to the fact that America is becoming more diverse. And I think it's the fear of others, whether they be Black, Latino, gay, trans, whatever. And I think the culture wars exacerbates those feelings.
I agree with you
because
on that.
the fear of America, the America that we knew. I mean, if you look at Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," as if America isn't great, and it's a return to the past. A past
Again,
where
they've asked him and supporters of his, when was America great? What are you referring to? And typically the most common answer is the 1950s.
Yep.
Well, the 1950s was right before the modern immigration laws were created in the early 1960s that opened up the country to more non-white immigration. So you're talking about the last decade where America was an overwhelmingly white country.
Well, the interesting part, you could see my personal opinion is you could see the economic repercussions of these crazy policies on immigration that are being promulgated, you know, probably coming at the pen of Trump's backers and writers, Trump's brain, so to speak, Stephen Miller et al. I think that the economy would basically take a real tumble because this country
It would, for sure.
This country depends on that immigrant labor force. You do not have white Anglo-Saxon Americans, middle-class Americans, basically in the workforce now doing tradesmen's jobs, doing unskilled labor jobs that, require the country to basically, a country's economy to keep on humming. I mean, it's, and what are you going to do? I mean, his dreamers would basically be subject to basically being sent back.
If
I mean,
only all of them
people
would
who are
marry
born-
Donald Trump, they could stay here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, only his in-laws,
Yeah.
kind of sad. I mean, this country was built on immigration. This country survives on immigration, and we need sound policy. I hope people who think and look at what's going on in America will see that basically we had an opportunity to do comprehensive reform on immigration, and Trump put his finger on the scale and prevented the Congress from acting on it. A bill that was bipartisan, written by a Republican from Oklahoma. Yeah. And he basically kiboshed it because when it comes
I
down
want to
to
run on this issue. That's what.
yeah, Donald Trump basically will do what's in his best interest.
Let's be honest. The MAGA Republicans are not interested in actually governing at
No.
any level of government you're talking about.
No,
Actually, passing legislation is not what they're interested in.
no, it's they're not. I don't know if it's whether they don't want to do the work or they pander to polls and they think that there's more opportunity to raise more capital for campaigns in the future if they take this stance, because I think the people on the extremes are willing to pump money into them. So they're playing to a small percentage of the American voting public for their political survival, because sadly of the dark money that's in politics today. How else can you explain the rise of a Matt Gaetz or the Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia? It's a sad state of affairs. They've done absolutely nothing. My sister, who was a very left-leaning liberal, basically said to me, because after they voted on the aid package, don't you feel differently about Mike Johnson? I said, no, not at all. I mean, and hopefully it's not too little too late. I don't know what aroused his conscience, but shortly after he brought that to a vote, he didn't do that without the benediction of Donald Trump. And it's funny that Donald Trump basically left Marjorie Taylor Greene, hung her out to dry, and those 11 other Republicans who are rabid supporters of his. But I have no respect for Mike Johnson. I mean, he sold this all a long time ago, and hopefully the Democrats
and the delay that he created in all of that aid for Ukraine has led to the current desperate situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
absolutely. I have to say, I don't think the issue of the war in Gaza is resonating enough with the voters on either side. I honestly don't believe that. I don't think it's a campaign issue. When the polling's done, when they list what are the reasons you're voting, what are the topics that you care most about, that's down the bottom of the list. You
don't think there are ultra progressives who are going to just stay home or write in a name in place of instead of voting for Joe Biden because they see him as culpable for Israel going overboard against the Palestinians?
No. When I look at those voters, I think they look at a balance sheet, and they'll basically look at that final balance sheet. It's almost like a bottom line. What's the P&L statement? And the P&L statement is that, Donald Trump could never vote for a third-party candidate and help elect Donald Trump. I'd like to in a subsequent podcast talk about people who think that third party or that the United States basically moved to a more than the two-party system. And I have a guest who is a big proponent of that, which I'm currently doing battle email wise back and forth.
Well,
and that's
I'm
not-
all for a multi-party system. I'm breaking this two-party system. I'm all for that. Especially with what the Republican Party has become, having been a Republican for
Yeah,
years. The Republican Party has to die. I hate to say it, it has to die. And I'm an old Bush McCain Republican, but the Republican Party has to die. It's not a party anymore.
the only way that occurs is if Joe Biden's reelected, because the Republican Party will then have to look at itself, and you'll see splinters. You'll see that potentially another party, coming out of the ashes.
And I think there's enough of a division in the Democratic Party that you could
Yeah.
have divide there too.
I think absolutely. I mean, and both.
But I'm more cynical than you. I mean, as somebody who wants Joe Biden to beat Donald Trump in the election, that I think young people, ultra progressives especially, are so committed to this idea of the good is the enemy of the perfect that they're going to not vote for Joe Biden. I think
They'll sit on their hands.
they'll sit on their hands. I think, and that in a state like Michigan, that could be a big difference. In a state like Pennsylvania, that could be a big difference. That you have a lot of young progressive voters who, and in Michigan especially, you have a lot of Muslim voters that could sit on their hands, and that could, in a very close state, swing those states to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think in Michigan, with regard to the Arab voters, where there are a lot of them, clustered around the Detroit, Grand Rapids area, I think that there's that's a potential. But the truth, and I know that Joe Biden's policies are trying to thread the needle, but I think that they're based on the humanity that the military response to Hamas's unforgivable actions is not proportionate. And
Well, there are a lot of, again, ultra progressives, and I see it especially with young people, that are willing to just ignore that there even was the awful action by Hamas that started this war, and act like October 7th didn't even happen. And
well, I don't know if it's symbolic or in fairness, because it is a court, but when the indictments of both the Hamas leader and Bibi Netanyahu came down from the World Court, I basically, see it that way, that they're both war criminals.
I do too. I think that they're both awful in that way, but I think a perception among a lot of young people and progressive people is that Israel's the only ones who are bad in this situation. They're mistreating the poor, unfortunate, innocent Palestinian people who have never done anything wrong and are just the victims of Israeli Zionists.
Well, I personally think that it's kind of sad. You can see the backlash, the reaction. It's almost like 1968.
Yeah.
Humphrey and Nixon.
Yeah.
You see the backlash in the voting, where the people who protest are the people who are the enemy. And history's proved that they weren't the enemy, they were right. The Vietnam War and the escalation of the Vietnam War, and the continued bombing of not only Lyndon Johnson, but Richard Nixon, produced a resistance by the enemy. The North Vietnamese, they would have basically, the more you bombed them, the more it strengthened and steeled their resolve.
Yeah.
The more you bomb and destroy Gaza, level it like a parking lot, the more you basically create more terrorists.
Again, I don't disagree. I'm not going to defend Bibi Netanyahu in any way.
No.
But I think a lot of people refuse to see that both sides are bad in this.
Yeah.
And I think most of the people, I mean, I'm generalizing, and as Mark Twain said, all generalizations are bad, especially this one. But I think a lot of the people who refuse to see that both sides are bad tend to be on that more liberal progressive side and are holding it against Joe Biden for supporting Israel, refusing to recognize that Hamas is bad too in this situation.
Sure they are.
And are
is
all saying, oh, look, the ICC is indicting Bibi Netanyahu because he's a monster. Well, they also indicted the Hamas leadership. And I don't think that's getting enough the attention. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You know that. I'm usually the first to poo-poo on any kind of conspiracy. But I personally think, as a teacher, seeing a lot of young people talking about, oh, I'm not going to go to Dunkin' Donuts because they give money to Israel, or all this other nonsense because I see something on TikTok that says these things. I suspect TikTok is pushing out a lot of this anti-Israel stuff to young Americans because they control what young Americans see on TikTok. That's based on some algorithm that the company running it controls in order to drive this division in America and lead to this anti-Israel sentiment in America.
You think it's the Chinese government, or no, you don't believe in conspiracies? I think it's driven by economics. I think isn't it ironic that the both houses agreed bipartisan to force the Chinese to sell their interests, which will never happen in TikTok.
Yeah,
That'll be in the court for years, and that the actual bill doesn't take place for 9 months. Well, puts it way after the election.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? You know,
I mean, it was a joke of a bill.
if you're right, it's going to be rampant, that stuff.
You should have seen the overreaction of students when that news came out that the Congress passed a law that TikTok was going to be banned, and they all didn't really read the news or anything. They just saw the headline and we're like, oh my God, tomorrow TikTok's not going to exist anymore. And they were all freaking out like, no, it's going to exist. And even if it didn't, you'll all find what the next app is. As a former MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat user, you'll all be okay if one social media app goes away.
Yeah, it's well, that'll basically.
But I am suspicious that that's being pushed out there to American young people to drive anti-Israeli sentiment and cause a problem there.
Well, you know, I think. Tell me how you think that's monetized. How is TikTok monetized? They don't take ads, right?
I'm not on TikTok. I'm not sure, but
I'm not on it either. I'm
they take ads.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how TikTok is monetized. You know, that's all. Or is it just solely an extension of China's?
I don't know if users maybe can pay to like promote their posts or something. I really don't know.
I don't either. That's my ignorance. That's going to be my assignment for our next podcast. Figure that out. How is it
TikTok?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to expect you to be able to come on and do a silly dance when you come on for the next episode.
You'll be waiting a long time, Joe.
People have asked us to start posting video of these podcasts to YouTube or somewhere, and I think that would be a good way to kick it off, is for you to come on.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Do whatever TikTok dance you've learned.
You know what? Do it around St. Patty's Day. We'll do the Irish jig.
Yeah. Well, that's putting a long hiatus between us in our next episode.
Yeah, we have to do something during the summer, you know. But
you just missed Cinco de Mayo. You could have done a little dance for.
Well, Joe, we've been involved in heavy conversation for now about a half hour. Can we spend a couple of minutes on the national pastime, or what used to be the national pastime? I guess football surpassed that, but not for people of a certain age. I really do feel bad. I don't root for the Mets to lose. I'm not an arrogant.
Okay, way to bring up a painful subject.
I know, geez, you know, like they're sinking fast. Now, let me just ask you this question. You know this more. If this continues, this malaise with the Mets, you know, and it's not only the offense, it's the pitching is, I don't know how to pitch. To me, the pitching is better than I thought it would be, but the hitting is, I think,
it is, but it's terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
In the last 2 weeks, we've dropped from being one of the top 3 by team ERA to now being about ninth in team ERA in the NL, which is pretty much, lower half of the pack.
I think that's inevitable. When you don't score runs on a regular basis, it's disheartening, and the pitchers feel like
Yeah.
they have this added pressure. I got to hold them
Also,
down.
it's been bad
Nothing.
news. Brooks Raley, who's an excellent reliever, is out for the year now, our lefty reliever. That puts, pressure on new guys coming up that are not really his caliber. And
I
the
feel,
worst has been that it looks like the old bad Edwin Diaz is back.
you know what? Yeah,
He can't seem to make it through an appearance without giving up a home run. I mean, that was the Diaz of the first year and a half
yes,
on the
yeah.
Mets. That
You know, do you think it's a matter of not having pitched in a year and that he's still rusty and he's got to work himself into form?
it probably is, but
Yeah.
it's still that's the result that we're getting right now from the guy who's supposed to be the elite closer. I mean, you can understand the circumstance, but it's also that's still the result that we're getting. These games count.
Prior to his injury, he was unhittable.
Yeah.
He was unhittable. He was the best reliever in baseball.
He has been very hittable this year.
Well, tell me, is all this
Not just
leading to
hittable, but it's been like that first year he came to the Mets where it seems like every game, it's not just hits are being given up, it's home runs are being given up.
well,
I thought bottom of the pit was last week when we blew a 9-4 lead against the Marlins.
yeah.
The Marlins are basically a double-A team.
Not even triple A.
No, they don't have any of the starting pitchers they expected to go into the year with. They all got injured in spring training or were already injured. Their offense is, I mean, they've got a few guys, but they even traded away Luis Ariz, the batting champion. They traded to the Padres. So I mean, who's the star of their offense? Josh Bell. Josh Bell has been available for a cheap contract to anybody who wants him the last 3 off seasons.
He's also 38 years old.
But I mean, honestly, I had no doubt when Edwin Diaz came in with a 4-run lead against them the other day that we were going to lose that game or that it was going to be very interesting. Let's just put it that way. I didn't feel confident at all that we were going to win in the 9th inning up by 4 runs against the Marlins with Diaz coming in. Ottavino gave up 2 runs in the 8th, and he's been awful this year, Adam Ottavino. And then Diaz gave up 4 in the 9th, including a 3-run homer to Josh Bell.
Yeah, Adam Ottavino was cooked a couple of years ago. I thought anyway.
When Bell came up and they already had scored a run to get within 3 and there were 2 men on, I really had no doubt in my mind how that was going to turn out with the way this year has been going for Edwin Diaz. And it did. He gave up a home run. And then our incompetent offense failed to bring in the free runner in the top of the 10th. And they immediately scored their free runner in the bottom of the 10th. And that was the end of the game. It's like, that was indicative of how this whole year has gone so far.
So tell me if the trend continues, all right, and the Mets obviously become sellers, who goes? Who goes and what's the plan, the game plan?
Well, Pete is gone if that's the case. There's who else goes? I would say McNeil, but his value is in the toilet right now because he's
that's a tough one. I don't think
not hitting the ball hard. His batting average is sitting around 245, but he's not hitting the ball hard at all. He's on some blue pits that have salvaged his batting average, but
his contract is substantial for the lack of production too.
It is. We would have to eat contract to trade him away. But,
I mean, the Mets to me, as I look at it, that one of the bright things that's going to happen is you get Alvarez back, and that's going to get him back.
When he went down is really where it started to. Yeah, the bottom started to
deteriorate. Yeah, I agree.
We were battling even. We had a hard schedule up to that point in the year. We had a lot of good teams that we faced, and we were playing 500 ball against really good teams. And I thought that was encouraging. And then once Alvarez got hurt, everything just seemed to fall apart.
It's interesting too. I mean, look, they're kind of saddled with. They're saddled with basically the Lindor contract. There's no way you can move.
Well, that's the thing. If he doesn't start hitting, it's a hopeless cause.
You know,
and
that's,
he's looked lost.
yeah, he has looked lost, and it's
Nimmo,
such,
Nimmo's had a down year too, but Nimmo's at least still getting on base. You know, he's giving the on base percentage element that you expect from him. But Lindor has just looked lost. He's not even getting on base. Um, and his defense hasn't been great either.
well,
Lindor.
he's playing left field now, right?
No, I mean Lindor, his defense is
Oh,
not
Lindor's defense, okay. Yeah,
all around
yes,
it's just bad. And
it's got it.
I don't know why our manager will not play Harrison Bader consistently.
Yeah,
Sticking Trace Thompson in there. Tyrone Taylor, not Trace Thompson. He keeps sticking Tyrone Taylor in there, who stinks. Want to say hi to Bill Venezia? But it's bad. We're in the middle of a podcast, but
Oh,
we
sorry.
have a guest, Anna Shriver.
Hi, everybody.
oh, Anna, how you doing, Anna?
Good, Bill. How are you? 26 days.
26 days, but who's counting?
Bill retired last year. Anna's retiring this year.
Don't count the days, make the days count.
I am making the days count.
I know you are.
I am looking forward to the end.
Sure.
There's no guest appearance fee for popping.
No,
There is-
no, you do get some royalties. You do get some royalties. It's, I think the royalties are you get a slice of pizza from the prince.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem, Anna. Joey shouldn't edit Anna out.
I'm not editing that out. Nothing gets edited out in this show.
Oh,
This is
good.
a low budget production.
Well, listen,
As for your
maybe,
Yankees, my Mets suck.
yeah.
How are you feeling about your Yankees?
Well, I first of all, they've had
I
a
mean, we
good
knew this was going to be a hard year for the Mets, so it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not doom and gloom today like I am some other years with the Mets because I didn't have much in the way of expectations this year. But it's bad.
I gotta, it's be interesting to be a fly on the wall with the general manager having a conversation with the owner because what's the impact, the poor plays impacted attendance. The Mets really aren't drawing that night. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. It's a downward spiral and that's what happens. As opposed to the Yankees so far, I mean, they're averaging over 40,000 a game, and that's because of, to me, not just one player, but the most impactful Yankee obviously is Soto. I mean,
Yeah.
and he's kind of revived Judge, to a certain degree. I mean, that's we'll see what happens if your owner's money can basically tempt them to go to Queens. But I like what I see. I like the fact that they've been able to maintain the ship without Cole.
Yep.
And you never know what's going to happen when he comes back. I mean, hopefully it's all good, but I saw the reports yesterday in his
Well,
bullpen.
with the Mets too, we keep getting
Yeah.
Senga's date pushed back.
Yeah,
We're at the point where Senga was supposed to be back already by the initial timetable that they gave when he went down, and he just got shut down again from throwing. So, I mean, what is his injury? Why does it happen with the Mets all the time that guys go down with injuries? People get injured on other teams and they come back when they recover. Mets guys seem to get injured and then they're never seen again.
Well, I think, there's something to a lot of the Japanese pitchers resist surgery. And,
That's true.
I think that it may be a fact that he had a tear that didn't completely sever. And I believe that, he wanted to go alternate therapies other than surgery. And I think that's what you're seeing potentially,
But this has happened with the Mets before, where they've given timetables of players, and then it just seems to inevitably keep on getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. I mean, I know it's beating a dead horse as I bring this one up all the time, but Jed Lowry was day to day for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
He had 8 total at bats with the Mets in 2 years, and it was supposed to be a day to day injury when he first went down.
I remember that. Yeah.
Year with the Mets.
Yeah, I guess that was his.
Day to day on other teams means maybe up to a week. Day to
They
day.
signed him as a free agent, right, from Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites, but getting back to the Yankees, I think that their starting pitching, which I don't think that was going to hold up like it has.
Yeah.
I think part of it is the competition between these guys because somebody's going to the bullpen. And up until the other day or the last two starts, I thought that was going to be Nestor Cortez. But Nestor, I think, senses that and doesn't want to, And honestly, if the Yankees are looking, if Cole comes back, I mean, I think initially the best move would be going to a six-man rotation, take a little of the stress off of him.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well, that was certainly the plan for the Mets if Senga came back, was to go to a six-man.
Yeah, the Yankees would have to get a couple of those relievers off the injured list in order to do that, because that's going to further, you're going to need them. You're going to need them, And again, Lewis Heel is the story of the Yankees pitching staff. I mean, the stuff is electric, but, he's never thrown more than 83 innings in a season. And how long is he going to be able to continue to pitch? He may be the guy that goes to the bullpen because he'd be a valuable.
It's a simple math issue that he goes to the bullpen. Yeah.
No, I mean, this guy's definitely going to be a blue chip starter. He could be a number two, easily. I mean, as long as Cole is there and pitching, he'll probably be a number two. I was happy that Rodon has kind of come back, to form. They definitely needed
Well, they
that.
needed that.
You know what?
Got to do it.
I look at him too, and he was heavier in his first year with the Yankees. He's really taken off the weight. And I think that's a tribute to Cole. Cole works out a lot, and his pitching stems from his strong legs.
Yeah,
and you have a look.
Many pitchers do.
He's a little Seaver-like with regard to that. I think that's why he's held the injury bug at bay. To a certain degree, because his lower body just supports that, less stress on the arm.
So you're still feeling confident in the Yankees winning the division?
Well, I think it's going to be a dogfight till the end with the Orioles. I think the Orioles are just so damn good, and I think that they're young. But although they just got swept, in a series with the Cardinals, that's the first time they've been swept by a team going back for 2 years. That says something about them.
That's how you put together good records, is you don't get swept. I mean, you at least
absolutely.
come away with one win in every series. You're in good shape.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Toronto being in where they are, and the Red Sox being where they are. The Red Sox are playing way over their heads. It looks like.
Yeah, unfortunately, my only hope is that we don't finish behind Washington and Florida and Miami. But I mean, the fact that we were like celebrating taking one game from the Miami Marlins is not a positive sign of things to come for the Mets. I think Washington's got some decent young pieces that they're going to probably finish ahead of us, to be honest, this year, unless something changes drastically for the Mets.
Well,
and Miami, if they could just face us all year, they would probably be in good shape, it seems like, but they have to face other teams too.
But I personally, think that it's get to the World Series or bust for the Yankees. The expectations are get there. And, I keep looking at those teams in the National League. They're definitely the stronger league. I mean, Atlanta's a super team. The Dodgers are a super team.
And so far Philly is playing.
Philly, holy moly. Yeah. I mean, that's, they lead Major League Baseball. I mean,
so
they're, what surprises me too, their pitching is there, and they still don't have an elite bullpen, I don't think.
No.
But they're getting such great starts from the pitchers who go deep into the game,
Bill, this period's about to end, unfortunately. This is a good one, but your final thoughts on our topics today?
Well, I think as we progress towards the June debate, I think things will become more solidified. And obviously, as we anticipate, I know that you think it doesn't matter. I do tend to think it matters with independence. The results of the trial.
We were talking about the existentialists before we started recording for the podcast. And I don't think anything matters or anything is real anymore. A large part of the population. So,
I'll just start calling you Albert Camus.
oui, monsieur. Well,
Well, Joe,
thank you all for downloading another episode of Wigs for Wigs. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Reach out to us as always with your thoughts and your questions. We can be reached at WigsForWhigs. That is WigsForWhigs @gmail.com. Take care, everybody.